The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful.
AI is a golden opportunity.
How do we ensure that this technology is regulated?
The long arc of technological history is now in an extraordinary new phase.
The AI6 Podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Lorcan Kinsella from Brand Nova, thank you so much for joining me on the AI6 Podcast.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm delighted to be here. It's a real honor.
Well, thank you. It's an honor for me too. But we go way back in terms of, training together, working together, being in the digital marketing industry in Ireland. So we've seen so much change. We've had to upskill. How would you describe the latest wave of transformation in digital marketing that is artificial intelligence?
Well, funny enough, as you could say that, Joanne, I can remember, when you have like your phone, you have these kind of memories come up on your phone. And only there just, I'd say 2 weeks ago, there was a memory that came up, I think it was around maybe 9 years ago. I think we were actually, I'm not sure if it was actually up in business school or some corporate kind of, we were training together and we came up in this photo together, I couldn't believe it. Now, to be honest, you still look as young as then as you do now, which is amazing. I've got maybe a tad less hair, but I'm still here. I'm still smiling. But at that time, like we were actually kind of in that, I suppose, digital marketing training. And I can remember, that it was kind of, it was the newest kind of show in town at the time, like, your digital marketing sort of diploma, which was, that's what I was actually involved in. So covering search engine optimization, paid advertising, digital marketing strategy, and all of that fun stuff. And we then hooked up and we went on for a number of years, like, I think it was actually with Learning Waves, and it was just such a fantastic experience, kind of like just kind of working alongside of you. But since then, things have just really gone a bit bonkers. And I think I can remember at the time where I found it back then a small bit overwhelming because of the amount of information that, whether it be even someone who was in the space and could understand what was going on in terms of whether it be search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising, social media ads, email marketing, not to mention the 42 different social media platforms we should be on. And you had all of that information and you had it all going on. And then you were kind of, and for me, it was actually all trying to manage it through an Excel spreadsheet, but hundreds of them. And now we're actually in a space of where we now have AI. And to be honest, where I would have maybe at the time looked into developing a piece of software, Nova 360, which I'll speak to you kind of later on about, but it was really, AI at the moment, the way it has evolved is pretty extraordinary in terms of where it's evolved into that sort of kind of prompt piece, but in our space within digital marketing. And ultimately, you can't really mention digital marketing around what ultimately it affects most, and that is business. So it has been a transformative time in the digital marketing, but it has been a doubly, it's kind of milestones ahead of then where you see business and all that, and how you kind of translate or communicate. And I know you're communicating this kind of on a daily, weekly basis, but to communicate that then to businesses of where there's a fear factor, there's actually kind of a sense of education again. It's like starting all over again.
It really is. And, when Sam Altman introduced ChatGPT to the world in November 2022, I kind of sighed and went, oh gosh, I'm going to have to reinvent myself again and upskill. Do I have the energy for it? Because as you said, a whole decade had passed and we'd done that. But, thankfully, and being true and honest, I am very excited about the time that we are living through. I think it's a bit of history, and you and I as educators and as practitioners get to be at the leading edge to bring businesses with us, because as small business owners, I absolutely know how transformational it has been. What in practice do you think it can do for business? Can we make more money? Can we scale like never before?
Yeah, a bit like yourself. I when I first initially kind of started using ChatGPT and trying to kind of show off to your kind of people you didn't know or who didn't have it. And I can remember showing it to a client, yeah, 2, 3 years ago, and then you kind of go down that rabbit hole. And I've no doubt, like many people on this podcast have talked about it, about the change in that. And for me, it started with the simple prompt, but now we're actually kind of gone very, very much into that sort of kind of having agents. And within my own business, I have gone down that sort of deep rabbit hole, and I feel that still I'm only kind of touching the surface. But it was, first of all, experiencing kind of the look, feel, interaction with ChatGPT. There's no doubt about it. I then moved on then to kind of checking out Perplexity, kind of Gemini, Claude, and then you're looking at all of the iterations like of that sort of war between the AI models and how that was playing out. But then, as you said, how does that, or how do I use that within my own kind of setup? So as I went in terms of looking at my business, I wanted to see how I could actually not just work at the business, because a lot of our businesses are somewhat nearly broken, and we have this new system now, and we're trying to plug in a new system into a broken system. Okay. And that's what I actually found nearly after 2, 3 months, that I just didn't think that it was working. It was great for prompts and this and that, and turn yourself into Superman and fly here and fly there. And there's all sorts of really fun things you can do that in the prompts and get to the daily shopping and get my itinerary, for where I'm kind of going on holidays next week. And if I'm going to a concert, to set out my journey, all of that is there for anybody who wants to use it. But when it comes to business, and what I've found as the biggest challenge of where I have had to take a step back and nearly re-engineer my own business, because it was nearly broken because I didn't have the workflows correct. So if you can imagine, within a business, you have your chief market, your CEO, you have your finance department, you've got your IT department, you've got your social media department. And the thing about it is, even if it's in a small, medium-sized enterprise, or even a solopreneur, they still actually have a responsibility in all of those responsibilities. They still have to do their VAT returns, they still have to do their are we making money on a monthly basis, how we put out that last podcast, how we actually could have done that social media post, how does it sound like kind of Lorcan Kinsella or Joanne Sweeney, all of these things were there. So it was a case of actually nearly building that contextual information around, say, for example, brand Nova and our software piece, Nova 360, of how we could then work better workflows and now where we've kind of gone into, I suppose, I don't want to kind of overwhelm kind of your listeners, but where we've had to actually kind of build out the simple workflows on a daily basis, so where we get the daily brief of exactly kind of where our CEO, which you think is me, is now kind of my desk CEO, goes in and does a full pull from my accounting software package, Trello, and Google Analytics, Google AdWords, Google Search Console, across the board, SEMrush. I've got connections into every single point or data point. And some of them weren't there, and some of them still aren't there within, say, for example, Claude. And that would be my main point, or I suppose Claude would be my user interface. Okay, that's my main interface. So I would have had to build out MCP connectors to connect into my business again, of where I saw bottlenecks of where it couldn't get information to run it even more effectively. So when I kind of get up in the morning, emails have gone to all of my staff to kind of follow up on this on the back of actually yesterday's work. And that is what run now by agents, which is a very, very, I suppose, really enjoyable thing to watch. It's kind of like getting a new toy at Christmas, seeing this and that it's possible. Because I can tell you now, Joanne, I couldn't have envisaged this 10 years ago. That I could sit. It's something I think we would have always maybe managed, and particularly people in small, medium-sized enterprise, of where you found that you were doing everything. You were doing the lot, and it was very, very hard to touch. But then when you could have built your team and whatnot, and where all of the responsibility comes down to the CEO or the owner, that there's nearly now there's a kind of a hierarchy, that you're not nearly you're not the one that they need to maybe kind of answer to. There's actually a system there that supports a very, very well rhythmed kind of monthly calendar across every department. As I said, your CEO department, your chief operations officer department, you have then your finance department, your IT, and everything is checked. It's not just done once. And it's something that I would have maybe mentioned years ago, and when I was lecturing with you, I think the winners in all of this, Joanne, I think they are the people who show up every day. So it's that sort of discipline, that it's that hard work, and it's the consistency of where you hit a challenge. And God knows I've hit so many different challenges around like kind of AI, of where an MCP connection broke and you have to rebuild it, or the context isn't right. But by pushing on, pushing, it's extraordinary kind of like how well it can I suppose improve business. And when it comes down to facts and figures, or figures more so, it has financially, yes, improved our bottom line in quite substantially, to be honest. Yeah.
Of all the AI conversations I've had, I've never heard someone describe, plugging in AI systems into a broken business and it's not going to work. And it's a brilliant analogy. So just explain to listeners and viewers who are watching it on YouTube why it's so important to have standard operating procedures if you want to use agentic AI.
Yeah, because the issue is actually workflows. And so what we've been working out of is models, and we've been working out of somewhat old models. So you can imagine that you've got a system, or what you can call a systematic model that's been in place for the last 10, 20 years, and you then look to plug it into what we see now, the new paradigm shift, agentic kind of agent models. And you've got an old system which is broken, plugging it into a much more dynamic, innovative, creative way. And you need to talk a new language over here, not take a kind of a very old language, plugging it into a new and expect kind of amazing results. So that's where I see where you need to move from the model mindset into the workflow, because you find that we do somewhat nearly the same similar things on a daily basis, whether it be professionally and across even all your staff. It's a kind of there's that sort of creative. But isn't it just an amazing idea that someone can take your tone, your voice, your brand, and actually move with that nearly kind of intuitively on a daily basis, and not have to check in with you, because you've built this really beautiful workflow that connects through your brand, through your whole, I suppose, standard operating procedures internally. And what we have done inside in Brand Nova ourselves, what we've built out the full standard operating procedure toolkit from beginning, middle, and end, through kind of finance, through IT, through social media, through branding, through actually kind of our finances. Like, all of that is actually done. So it's not just we do it once, it's now a workflow. It works nearly like water. It's running all the time. It doesn't stop. When they're tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, we'll actually it'll kind of jump in, and I mean, we haven't even put a name on it. Now, we're actually boring. We call it Claude. I mean, but you call it whatever you want. But the CEO engine is actually running, connecting out to all of the stakeholders in your business, finding out, was that done, checking full Trello, where again, I would have spent hours, Joanne. You can imagine, like, I always find, like, that, time is our most precious commodity, okay? It's our most precious commodity. And I think it's maybe kind of, as I'm getting older or whatever, you want to use that time so like, doing so many things that you want to do, right? For me, like, whether it be to play the guitar, I want to do, kind of the piano, I want to travel, I want to eat, cook new things. And I'm there saying, I don't want to be strapped to kind of, a PC kind of from 9 to 5. And this is actually maybe allowing me to do that, is spend a bit of time building it, but then where you can actually kind of move beyond that. And that's where the time piece is so important. It's just giving me time back of where I can do things which I mightn't have been able to do before, because there's actually now a very, very, I suppose, a very, very connected workflow system working throughout the business on an hourly, daily, weekly basis.
And you've really leveraged artificial intelligence by creating Nova 360, but this was all already in situ before AI became mainstream. But has AI accelerated its sophistication as well?
Yeah, we couldn't help ourselves, with AI and with Nova 360. And just to kind of give your listeners, what like Nova 360 is, going back again, as when we were, I can remember when I was lecturing, I was overwhelmed with information and Excel spreadsheets. And what I wanted was a very, very simple dashboard of where I could plug in all of my keywords to see exactly where they were positioned in real time. Okay, so I was pulling information from Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google AdWords, Meta AdWords, your social media accounts. All of these things are actually sitting on separate dashboards here, there. And you can imagine as well, when I talk about time is precious, you look to see, well, we go onto that dashboard, that's losing for me time. Where we can't get the user ID and password, well, we can't because Mary's left the business and she's taken the password and we can't find her because she's in Colombia on a kind of a around the world trip somewhere. It really kind of just stunts a business progress and stagnates. So what I wanted to do was I just wanted to bring all of that information into one interface, plug it in of where you could see exactly what was happening within your business and then compare it to your three competitors. So for the first time, you actually have a real sense of what is going on in the business, which for us, it's so, so important. We built it, I built it for Brand Nova, but I built it for Brand Nova to give me a visual data on my clients to find out how we could grow their revenue online. But now what we're doing is we're actually rolling it out to businesses just for them to see what's going on in their business. And then they can actually come back to Brand Nova and say, well, look, we have all of these gaps. Okay, well, how can we then close those gaps? And that's where I suppose I kick in with the digital marketing strategy of then bringing in search engine optimization services, paid ad services, social media ad services, to, I suppose, bring them either two things, Joanne. We are actually responsible for actually delivering leads to a company, which actually equals acquisition revenue, or we actually build e-commerce brands. And again, that's where we start with actually, whether it be 500,000, a million, and we grow the revenue. But we use it from the foundation level, foundation layer of Nova 360, of seeing the information first. And it's only by seeing the information first, then we can grow.
Well, let's bit of a demo. And if you're listening to this, you see it actually on the YouTube channel where this is being played, and I'll also embed a blog post associated with the podcast. So obviously then AI became mainstream and you were able to, I guess, up the ante with Nova 360. So what can it do now? And we're watching it on screen.
Yeah, so this is actually the dashboard, and these are actually kind of the SEO wins. Like, this is the sort of AI kind of playing out in real time in terms of, we can know that we've got 63% improvement in Google keyword rankings. We've got 320% or 302%, organic search sessions grew by 302%. So these are real-time plugged in information in real time for the company, not a PDF sent to the managing director or the chief marketing officer a month later or on a monthly meeting basis. All of what I'm showing you is actually kind of real-time information. And this is what we sometimes would use, for our monthly meetings with all of our clients in terms of actually the methodology of how we're growing their leads or we're growing their e-commerce revenue, and is through just very, very simple information. To actually give you an idea, we have, let's see, now I'm just going to actually pop over here. Here is actually kind of very, very simple, where we have an SEO audit score, for example, of exactly what's happening with the client. So we know their on-page optimization is actually really doing well, their off-page optimization. But sometimes we get a client where we find that they're not doing too well, but that's actually how then we work on that. We actually have as well, just directly underneath that, we have Google My Business. And this is something you might see on your phone, you might see on the right-hand side of your desktop. And I'm being very conscious of the listeners on the podcast where they can't visually see this, so I'm not going to spend too much time. the whole idea is we've got to connect it in one spot. So you can see exactly how many people have visited the website, requested directions, how many people have called you. How we want to find out, like, for example, like, kind of how well is the page speed and load time of your website. And you can imagine, like, for say an e-commerce brand, and I can remember doing this with you, kind of going back all those years ago, like that if we actually land on an e-commerce brand looking to kind of buy kind of a pair of like glasses, or actually kind of whatever it may be, like, kind of clothes wear or whatever, if that is actually not loading fast enough, we're gone somewhere else. So to have a fast loading time and to monitor it on a daily, weekly basis in real time is so important, because if you don't, we're losing revenue. And that's actually where a client would ask, well, why aren't we making more money than X? And I could say, well, the reason being is because your site is taking maybe 10 seconds to load, but we know that information. We have that to hand. Right underneath that is we've got Google Analytics. And these are all very, very boring terms for the majority of people out there. And I get that. But the really interesting part about all of these figures is this is telling us that we actually kind of have like more people on mobile maybe than desktop, but where we kind of, I suppose, focus our marketing and actually how we can make real gains for clients. And those real gains are actually kind of, I suppose, the business piece of this. This is actually kind of where you grow revenue on a monthly basis. It's actually through data. It's through very, very simple kind of lead gen kind of information. Like, what we have as well is all of, like, on the right hand side, on the left hand side, we have all of these kind of beautiful kind of things of where you can link into. But this is your cockpit. It's just like, flying a plane. What I find, and the simplest analogy I can actually kind of share to, I suppose, clients is we're flying a plane, okay, but we've got no compass. This provides you with the compass. And I wouldn't expect anybody here to maybe kind of know it all. It's impossible to know all about search engine optimization, all about paid ads, social media ads. It's impossible. However, where we actually connect all of this in, we have experts in terms of how we deliver the services on that. And what I find, or the next connected kind of analogy to that would be Michael O'Leary kind of runs one of the biggest, most, and I think you actually kind of had words with him there in the last number of days, most successful airline in the world, okay, and which is extraordinary. However, Michael does not fly the planes. Michael actually strategically knows how to kind of run like $1 billion kind of company, like, and that's pretty extraordinary stuff. But he can actually kind of provide the data, the information, the logistics, the whole strategic thing of how it works. And that's actually what any business can do with this here, is just seeing it. And we do it, but we first have to see the data first, and then we implement it.
It's almost like you're opening the eyes of your CEOs and your managers to the insight within the business, because data is everywhere, but data you need to convert into insight. So what has been the response to your clients who are maybe seeing their data presented like this for the first time?
Yeah, the initial reaction to the majority of clients, because you'll have like your CEO, it says that's just amazing, like, so you can actually kind of plug that in for your chief marketing officers or your marketing managers, or even founders. It's a blow away moment, because first of all, they've got transparency and accountability of their business for the first time, because this has just demystified all of the absolute, at times, rubbish that comes from agencies out there. I'm sorry, but there's just so much waffle, there's so much rubbish, there's so much nonsense around digital marketing. Because we mentioned the word digital marketing, suddenly business goes out the window. This is actually a foundational data piece to I suppose, educate or keep a client with you, that you can explain the why something happens, of the reasons, the why we have to kind of go down this particular route of, say, search engine optimization or Google AdWords campaigns, whatever, because we now have the reasons why. And when clients see this and they understand that it is a wow moment, and it's a sense of actually just, I think, ownership, but that they've got control back. They've got control back of their business, because some other digital marketing person is kind of being kind of just, I don't understand what's going on. This just gives them clarity.
And I guess the next natural step for a business is, handing this dashboard to an agent, and the agent then uses the insight to then tweak campaigns or to, complete additional.
God, yeah, you're yeah. Look at this. This is the kind of holy grail for me, is that have that next step. We're not there yet. We've spent the last 6 months kind of integrating kind of that AI kind of underbelly like into this, where we're connecting in real time, much better updated results on whether it be Google AdWords, Google campaigns, and different things like that. But 100%, this is the exciting part. This is actually what kind of really kind of gets me going, like, and why I'm still so much interested and so enthused, like, by digital marketing, and like why I do it day in, day out. People say you're mad, like, what drives you is what you've just said is actually the next step of where it can provide much better clarity and in a much more I think as well, like, it's not generic, Joanne, that sort of way. It's really talking to that specific business, whether it be kind of a pharmacy, or whether it be a solar business, or whether it be Windows. It's not just kind of this one fit all type of mentality. It's really contextualized into that specific business. So that's really important to me. That because I always find as well with all of this kind of AI, like, that there's sort of that you miss that human touch, that sort of sense of connecting. Even yesterday, like, I had a client, like, well, not even a client, but someone rang me, like, who's going to be a potential client, said, look, could I just meet you? I just want to meet you, and I take that really, I'm going to meet them. I just couldn't meet them yesterday, but I will meet them and sit down and kind of go through them, because I still really believe, like, that you have to actually kind of do what you're doing at the moment, is getting people seeing your eyes, seeing what's kind of going on, seeing, like, the I suppose the passion behind what it is, but it does make sense. It is happening, and it's bloody exciting. It's really exciting stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited for that next chapter now for Nova 360, and how we're going to kind of, I suppose kind of grow that market piece. Like, it's an exciting time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a real gift to small and medium enterprises and to owners who've been just up to their knees in the doing, whereas now we can do more of the thinking with our agents and our technology. So for anyone who's listening, who's overwhelmed by artificial intelligence, but knows that there's huge potential for their business, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and again, depending on actually kind of the size of business, but because you can imagine, like, that we're at a space, or we're at a time at the moment of where we've kind of got through that, and that first phase of actually, okay, that it can actually kind of set up my itinerary, it can do all of these kind of tasks, and it's amazing and whatnot. But then we actually have where we want to introduce to a business, and that's actually sometimes a hard gate to open for businesses, because you've got data, you've got kind of, I suppose, GDPR, you've got data, kind of like, kind of privacy issue. You also as well are plugging it into kind of very sensitive systems that companies have, and I think it's slow. See, people, like, we because I've moved at such a pace, is because I'm a founder, owner, manager who has a passion and really loves this stuff, and I can make decisions much faster kind of going forward. I can see the power of it. But I have seen it in terms of where if we don't move, there is going to be risks that I think we all have to take. We can take them in measured. But if you stop and stand back and wait for another 2-3 years down the road, you're going to really lose competitive edge of how this can really, how can really affect the prosperity of your business, and how that grows, how your business grows over the next number of years. And you can be guaranteed that if you're not doing it, your competitor will find a way to do it. So it is a great time. I find that there's a bit of a gold rush kind of piece around it. I wouldn't have been as passionate about it maybe 6 months ago, but it's only from I've gone down the rabbit hole, I can see the opportunities there. For example, like, even like Nova 360, or what we're doing in Brand Nova, we weren't doing 6 months ago. Our level of client base is growing significantly because we're leveraging reports much better for clients. We're giving them better information. We're giving them better leverage through kind of Nova 360. All of those things were not possible. And even the administrative work, which was really just difficult to kind of pull in from so many departments, is nearly happening without any friction whatsoever. So that is just freeing up all of this maybe more sort of creative time of where we can see now opportunities kind of where we wouldn't have seen those before because we're so maybe deep in the trenches of just doing the daily work. And if anything, kind of, Joanne, I think that's what it does. It just gives you an opportunity to breathe and see the possibility of what and how you can maybe grow and see different avenues of how you can kind of grow your business.
So are you offering people like a free demo or a call to show them Nova 360? And if so, where can they
Yeah,
go
I'll
for
be
it?
very, very clear. We don't actually have kind of a free because it was always, I suppose, designed for ourselves. And it's not something that we're saying, but we're just not there yet. But because we on board like our clients, because we need the information first. Once we show a client or a potential like Nova 360, it's a sign up. But then obviously it's where we spend a lot of our time is actually then coming in behind and actually plugging in our SEO services, paid ad services, social media services, as in now the ads, we don't do social media ads and email marketing in terms of growing a brand's revenue. Okay, that's what we do. So we're not there yet, but what we have noticed in the last certainly like kind of 2 months since we kind of made the decision in-house to say, right, we're going to actually kind of put it out on a subscription basis. We put it out for €75, which is a fraction of the information, what you're going to get back in information of how you understand your business is just mind-blowing. And we would have a consultant who would actually work with you, whether it be me or one of the team, to actually say, right, this is the right thing that I am doing, or I need to actually kind of say it's not for me. We haven't had any business connecting that has actually disconnected. So so we're happy with that, and we're happy with the pace as well. So, but by all means, if anybody out there is looking to kind of get a demonstration, you kind of got a business and you're looking to get clarity, or you're not getting that sort of, you're not getting that kind of feel good factor like or information from your current kind of agency or provider, whatever, by all means, Lorcan at brandnovadigital.com. I will certainly have a chat with you, and we can take it further. Yeah.
Brilliant. And they can also find you on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, Lorcan Kinsella on LinkedIn. You'll see it'll pop up, black and white photo. You can't miss me. I'm there. I'm I'm not far from it yet.
Well, listen, Lorcan, great to catch up with you. Congratulations on what you're doing in your own business, but also the increases in revenue that you're doing for your clients. And yeah, let's keep experimenting with artificial intelligence and see where it takes us.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to take the opportunity, John. Thank you so much for this. Really, really enjoyed it. It's just fantastic to kind of get out at times and kind of talk to you. It's been such a long time, which has been great to just touch base again. I think this is an exciting space, and I really look forward to like what's coming down the tunnel now. Like, so yeah, thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you again very, 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 very shortly.
Amazing. Thanks, Lorcan.
Thank you.